So I've got, obviously, we're going to, what I'll do, it may be a bit pragmatic, but I'll try to, keep it, together as much as possible. So we all know what's going on in Afghanistan, and as you all hear that, that people claim that it has, we have to leave. There's a lot of people who are, who are happy about the leave and the decision which was made. And I hear a lot of people who are saying that it has nothing to do with the West. So whatever happens in Afghanistan is thousands of miles away. But the truth is that it is very far, but the security of the West, especially UK, or Europe and America, is connected. It's not just there, it's the Middle East. And I'm going to explain why Afghanistan is strategically important. Why is it an important place from a strategic point of view? And you see, the location of Afghanistan, first of all, where it's located, it is basically surrounded by the foes or enemy of the West. And when we talk about China, Iran, Pakistan, these are people who are culturally, socially, and when kids are born until they're raised, they are raised by hearing the propaganda, all the news, and all these information about anti-West, that the West is against us. Every single infidel wants us, to die or whatever. So there's always that hatred going on, especially in Pakistan. And I say that because I lived there and I saw that. So now, for Muslims, Afghanistan is a very holy land. It's a land when, going back to, 1400 years ago, when Prophet Muhammad was alive, he used to say that this land will be very difficult to conquer and make them Muslims. But once they do, they will be the headquarters or the stronghold of Islam. And it happened. It took them 13 years to only conquer a part of it. And then the Afghans, basically, they decided to be Muslim. So now the whole Middle East sees Afghanistan as a place where the victory of the final victory of Islam will start from here. So they will always want foreigners out of there. Now that's the view of Middle Easterns, Arabs. The other problem is that the Iranians, which is next door, they didn't want America or the West to succeed there as well. On the other hand, you have Pakistan. Pakistan don't want an Afghanistan which is stable, or an Afghanistan who is anti-Pakistan. See, historically, Afghanistan is always pro-India, even though India is not Muslim, but the politics is that we're closer to India than we are to Pakistan. So Pakistan now wants an Afghanistan which is stable enough so it's managed. Not a completely stable Afghanistan. That's why it's in the national interest of Pakistan to keep Afghanistan unstable. So during the invasion, when it happened, America, UK, they all sent money to Pakistan. Pakistan always used the narrative of having 3 million Afghan refugees in Afghanistan because they are suffering. They played the victim role. So Americans paid them billions of dollars. What they did, that money went straight to ISI, their intelligence services, and that money was used funding the Taliban, Haqqani, and other networks to kill American soldiers. And the defeat of America happened because of it. There was no Chinese money. There was no Russian money there. It was all American money who defeated the West. And now, if you look at it, why the security concerns the West? Look at the Al-Qaeda and all other terrorist networks in the Middle East and all over the world congratulating the Taliban, announcing their allegiance to the Taliban. And they do that because they have got a safe haven now, a country where they can train, they can attack. Because the thing is that all these networks, including Islamic State, they're all training in Afghanistan right now. When US was there, they kept them very quiet. They kept them they couldn't do anything because they were hitting them from all over, even though they knew about the fact that they're paying funds to the Pakistanis and Pakistanis were sending money back to kill American soldiers. But the problem for the West was that the West cannot also have an unstable Pakistan. So they have to sacrifice Afghanistan for Pakistan, especially the United Kingdom. And they do that because of the balance of power of India and Pakistan there. Because India have nuclear weapon, Pakistan has a nuclear weapon too. So Afghans here, even though they have nothing to do with these two, they want to have a relationship with both of them. They are being used as sacrifice them as sacrificial goat. So they are basically saying that, okay, even though we're losing a lot of soldiers and Islamism or the Sharia law is expanding, they still have to have a stable Pakistan because now they're a nuclear weapon. Can you imagine what would happen if Taliban take over Pakistan and they have nuclear weapon? Iran doesn't even have nuclear weapon. But look at them. The West cannot control them. So this is, the loss is not just a victory to Iran. Iran, obviously, they kicked them out of there. Now America cannot hold in Iraq as well. They have betrayed people. So basically, they left all those moral obligations that they had. They betrayed that. So the trust there. So basically, for an empire to stay a superpower, they have to commit. They have to stay committed to their words. But the U.S. couldn't do that. That doesn't affect the U.S. now. That also affects the European Union as well. Now, people are not only mad on the U.S. I mean, obviously, Taliban were mad on the U.S. and EU for forever. But now those people who were left behind, they absolutely hate the U.S. They hate the U.S., they hate the EU as well, because they were left to be slaughtered. As we're seeing that on a daily basis, we're losing thousands of people. Those who worked for the U.S. forces, they were slaughtered now. So now the other point is that the victory here, again, is economically as well. Economically, if you look at it, why China are happy, why Russia are happy, and Pakistan are happy. So the future of the world is lithium. People always talk about, like, obviously, we're going to have electric cars and everything, but you need batteries for that. Afghanistan has mountains of lithium. Mountains, which are, they're untouched. We had British companies researching in Afghanistan, and we escorted them. We provided security for them all those years because they wanted to find the location of lithium, and they did. Which is now the contracts, now it doesn't go to the West anymore. So economically, it will go to China. China will have the benefit. They buy it from Afghanistan, and China can actually do whatever they want with it. But obviously, the West comes second. So the prices, they will benefit from that. Now, again, going back to the other resources, again, economically, and this goes obviously militarily as well, uranium. Uranium is used to enrich nuclear weapon. And that, again, is in Afghanistan. And that's with the border in China. It is up north Afghanistan, which is bordered by China, which is all the Hindu Kush mountains. And again, it's already signed, the contracts are signed with China. So they will have access to it. Iran will have access to it. So this is the other threat. This is the other security threat which will provide. Obviously, once Iran has a nuclear weapon, they're not just creating a problem for Israel. They are creating a problem for the West as well. They will not be able to control these rogue nations. Historically, they have been always hostile. Look at the Persian history. Look at the Chinese history. They are not going to sit quiet. People, obviously, what you hear from politicians on media, of course, they play the nice guy. So that's the other issue that which is creating a lot of problem for the West. But now West lost that as well. I'm sorry, sometimes I lose focus. And yeah. Now, in terms of all the equipment, so the technology that we had, for example, there were Eagle Scan drones that we had. It was given to the Afghan army. So these are very sophisticated drones, which could give you thermal imaging, night vision, everything it had that. So wherever you hide the terrorists, you could find them easily. Taliban did not have access to these weapons. Now they have that. When it comes to night vision goggles, so the night vision goggles is one of the technologies that when you wear it, obviously, you see everything, but at the same time, it has a different lighting that it's only visible with the night vision. You cannot see it with naked eyes. You can only see through that. So those were basically made the soldiers superior in the operations. When we went out there, we could see them, we could point at them. They couldn't see us at all. It was a complete dark for them. Now they have that capability. So even if in the future there's a special operation going on, that capability is gone. They have lost that too. The armored vehicles. And see, now the MRAPs, there's a type of vehicles which British Special Forces have too. It's American, which costs each one of them up to $1 million. So that's gone. Now they're going to Pakistan, they're going to Iran. Now they will copy it. They have all the technology that the US had. Black Hawks. And the other, so this was obviously militarily, they have got all the weapon, and this is going to be a massive blow for the West. And if the West wants to, think about going back, it's not going to be as easy. It's not going to be, just we're going to go like before, we're going to operate, we're going to bomb them, and that's it, we take over. No. In night vision goggles or any other technology, it is very small, and it can be kept anywhere. So they cannot use it anymore. I remember only one team in Kajaki had that one night vision, and we had to conduct so many operations to get that one night vision goggle back, and we still couldn't. And every operation that we went, our location was just given just like that. And this was one night vision goggle. Now they have thousands of it. And there's a lot of obviously other technologies that I'm not allowed to talk about, but they have already taken over this. Now, the problem here, the 20 years, again, some people blame that, obviously Biden claimed that the Afghan army did not fight. The other mistake that the West made, that they created an army which was always dependent, what's the word on that? They were dependent on the US forces, on the air power. They were designed to defend, not to offend, not to have an offensive operation. That's how they were designed to. But as soon as the contract was signed, the deal was signed, they left the 160,000 contractors which were working for the Afghan Air Force, for the other maintenance, because they didn't teach Afghan army how to maintain their equipment. So they just left, basically disabled the whole Afghan Air Force and Afghan army. They couldn't even fix a Humvee because they didn't know how to. All they were taught was basic stuff. Only special forces were the only force which were taught how to fight. And the other big blow for Afghan army was giving legitimacy to the Taliban. The legitimacy was given to the Taliban was when Trump actually signed that deal. When they signed that deal, that's it, they were a legitimate force there. And that gave them a power to talk to all the Arabic countries. All these Arabic countries, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, they support Taliban. If you pay attention, look at the social media, not even Palestine, that they are supposed to be an oppressed nation, they didn't even make one comment about Afghanistan. Absolutely none. Nothing came from the Middle East in support of Afghanistan. But they were actually celebrating the defeat of the United States and the West in Afghanistan. So the enemy of the West has got this psychological victory here. The whole of the entire of Middle East. Now, why does it affect the United Kingdom? Let's say just the UK. The communities in the United Kingdom started celebrating that. This again gives them psychological victory. This again gives them a place to go and fight and learn how to fight. And then come back, they will harm the United Kingdom. They will harm it. People don't see it, but it will happen. Everybody really misunderstood or underestimated the capabilities of Islamic State. We all know how many people went from here and they came back, and what they did here was terrible. Not just here, the whole Europe. This time, they have given them a legitimate government to go there, a land which is incredibly difficult to control. If you look at the terrain in Afghanistan, the mountains, it is almost impossible to locate every single Taliban movement or any of them. I mean, back then we had human intelligence. Now the CIA and other intelligence services, they have lost that. They don't have spies anymore. All these spies, most of them are evacuated or slaughtered. So they have lost that human intelligence. Those human intelligence was just not in Afghanistan. They had spies who were active in Afghanistan, but they could also gather information from Iran, from Pakistan, and from other surrounding nations. Now the West have lost that capability too. So if you look at it, there's absolutely no gain for the West, and West in particular, to talk about. There's absolutely no gain. They have lost in terms of political influence. They don't have influence over that region anymore. They have lost militarily, even if they say they don't, but we did. That's a loss because they gave up to them. They have lost economically. They have lost socially. They cannot control that society anymore. And that society, well, they have influence in the West as well. All these communities, people, obviously the media doesn't show that. But it is completely mess here. If you in terms of infrastructure, they spent millions of that money. That's all given back to the Taliban. All these military training camps and everything. That's for the terrorists basically right now. So again, there's a lot of loss. There's no gain there. But if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer that. And I'm sure there's a lot of details that I cannot think about right now. I wanted to tell you, but this was just a brief idea. Any of you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it and elaborate on that.
Hi, Eddie. Thanks. That was really, really interesting. Couple of things. First one's probably a really difficult question. What should have been done? If it were down to you, what would you have done differently? Given from the decision to go in the first place, I mean, that's a big question, whether they should ever have gone in the first place. Once they were in there, at what point could they still have got a positive outcome? What could have been achieved?
So, up to 2012, I left the country. But in 2000, before Obama took over, there was no Taliban. I could personally, even though I was an interpreter, I was number one target. I could travel all over the country by myself in my car, absolutely no problem. Taliban were defeated. They were defeated militarily, psychologically, because the military had the power to do so. Their hands were not tied. But as soon as the politics changed, so this is the other problem, that the constant change of strategy from the United States, it absolutely destroyed their own efforts. So when Bush was, obviously, he was done with his term, and Obama took over, what he did, he announced that I'm only here until 2014, and then we're going to withdraw the forces. What they did, because I was listening to Taliban conversations and everything, and they said that, there you go, they are leaving. They are leaving. Exactly. We only have 5 years to hold. We don't have to worry about it. And they are leaving. If they are leaving, this is it. And what happened, all those people who psychologically accepted that this is it, Taliban are done, this is going to be a new government, a new country, they thought like, okay, if they're going to leave us, why am I going to work with these guys? Why do I have to fight? If they're going to make an enemy for me. And at that time, the Afghan army was basically nothing, even worse than where it was a year ago. They said, why should I? They're giving me nothing. They're not allowing me to do anything. Why should I fight? So psychological victory was given to the Taliban. That should not have happened. They should have stayed there. They should have not said anything. But if you had to withdraw, you just had to withdraw slowly. What they did, they had no strategy. They had no idea how to do that. And instead of keeping their mouth shut, they sent 32,000 Marines to Helmand province, where British forces were. They committed a lot of things. They basically went there and wanted to kill Taliban militarily, get it done. Obviously, civilians got killed. This created a hatred as well. So the campaign of counterinsurgency, which had started in 2007, was effectively destroyed. So that was one of the issues. And when Obama finished, Trump started, the strategy changed again. So they should have had one strategy. And the other problem was that they did not put any pressure on Pakistan. Instead, they paid them billions of money. Look, I don't know why, obviously the politicians, they talk about it, everybody knows about it. Pakistan created Taliban, and the safe haven for them. They were basically, there was obviously no border. The border is really difficult to control. They were arming them, training them, sending them, using the West's money to kill Western soldiers. All these British soldiers. I have caught many suicide attacks, Punjabis from Pakistan. We have caught, interrogated thousands of Taliban from Pakistan, from Chechnya, which is from Russia, from Saudi Arabia, from Syria. All these terrorists, they were coming there to do their jihad. And how they were coming? Through Pakistan. Because they were getting the money. They didn't have to do anything. They were actually using this excuse that, look, you created this war in Afghanistan, and now my country is also suffering from it. So you need to pay me money. And the West kept giving them money.
Right.
Again, the other problem is the strategy was not just from the US. The UK had a different strategy in Afghanistan. Again, the UK is focused they don't care. Like, to be frankly say that they don't, United Kingdom's politics doesn't care about Afghanistan. They are worried more about Pakistan. They have to have a Pakistan which is stable enough, which is powerful enough to compete with India, so there's no massive nuclear war there. But at the same time, they have to kind of play smart politics. They also have to play with American wishes too. So United Kingdom, it doesn't matter if Taliban are there or not, as long as Pakistan is happy.
Okay. So you would have gone in and stayed in, but then, should they, once they're in, does that mean that the only way you can have a stable Afghanistan is for an outside power to stay there indefinitely? Or is it just always inevitable that whenever it's left to its own devices, the Taliban or another extremist group will prop up, just crop up again?
So I would have played differently, and this is just not me, obviously this is the view of millions of Afghans. That first of all, the other problem with the US and the UK was that they always imported politicians who lived all their life in the West. They had absolutely no knowledge of the contemporary Afghanistan. Afghanistan has changed. Those people who came, like for example, the President Ghani, who ran away, he was an American citizen. He left as a teenager. He came back as an old man to rule Afghanistan. You had absolutely no idea of the Afghan local culture. So the decision, exactly, and the aides that were brought there, the ministers, every single one of them, they were sent by one country of an Afghan. They were Afghan basically who resided in their country for 3 decades at least. So when they were there, they did not empower the local population. The local population was only there to fight. And even fight, they were not taught properly. Like, this is how you fight. Instead of empowering a nation, empowering a country who are staying there to take the control, because even when Taliban leaves, you have the ability, to hold that. If you bring someone else from let's say from the United Kingdom or the US, as soon as a little bit of pressure applied, he's going to run away. Like he did. He basically also signed the deal, but what happened is actually before leaving, and this is according to the general officer who was from Afghan intelligence services, they said the sign was deal, but what happened, they told the Afghan army, retreat, surrender, we have a strategy. This is an intel gathering information, so don't worry, leave it to the Taliban, come back to Kabul, and we're going to fight, we're going to restart, we're going to start from here. And as soon as they all gathered in Kabul, he ran away. So this is the other mistake they made. Instead of empowering the local population, they brought everyone people from all over the world.
Yeah.
I hope that answers.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's this sort of mind-boggling sort of. It's just the constant thing of the West wanting to intervene, and then it just doesn't. It's like the Vietnam thing. It just doesn't have the will. It can't get the will to see things through and win because it's constantly having to worry about how it sells at home. So the short-term gains of saying, I'll bring our boys back home, regardless of what's going on the ground, however much they've got a war won militarily or, under control militarily, they just can't sustain one policy long enough, or they get, so worried about losing votes of the public and stuff that it means they can't do any long-term planning or see far enough ahead. So,
well, of course. Look, the other problem was that, again, the constant change of policy was the big one. The constant change of policies, it absolutely killed us. From the start, the Afghan army, and the other problem, again, another problem, if we go at the really micro level, so every Afghan officer had a mentor. And every American officer, when they come, they show them this is how you do it, this is how the paperwork works, these are the tactics you use for 6 months. And then 6 months later, the other officer will be like, no, this is wrong. We're going to give you a new system. This is how you're going to fight.
Okay.
And then 6 months later, the same thing kept happening. So the Afghan military was not designed to hold. From a military perspective, when you go to an area, you clear first, you hold, and then you obviously you build. That's a clear, hold, build. Afghan army was taught to clear, And the clearance wasn't done by the Afghan army. It was mostly done by the West with their air power and mentors. And in the hold position, they were just given. They were not told. They were given a plan of 90 days. That's it. They were not taught how to, communicate with the local population, how to, teach them. See, the other, again, it doesn't go to the West. The other massive problem is with Afghanistan. Afghanistan is one complicated country. We are made of different races, different ethnicities. The only people you cannot find in Afghanistan is black people. You will find white, you will find Chinese, you will find Mongols, you will find Russians, you will find all sorts of people, all these empires who actually attacked Afghanistan, and they absolutely hate each other. So that's the other part. If I'm from the north, if I go to the south, I'm looked as a foreigner. So basically, they would love to kill me. They will kill me. I'm not allowed to live there. And it goes the same with them. If they go to the north, they can live, but they will not be killed. The north of Afghanistan is very liberal. North of Afghanistan, central Afghanistan, they want to live just like any Western country. But if you go down south, they are living in the 12th century. And that's where the stronghold of the Taliban are. They are not educated. They are not familiar with technology. But that's the stronghold of the Taliban. The Taliban fighters, again, I have come across so many of them, that if you give them a mobile, some of them will not recognize that. There was a video a few days ago. He was in Kabul, and the journalist went there with a small mic, wanted to interview him. He saw that, he was like, what is this? What does it do? And then instead of talking to him, he was shocked to see something like that small. Yeah. So that's the kind of people they are, and they will be used, to conduct suicide attacks, to kill themselves. They don't care. Life means absolutely nothing to them. And that's the other part of the Afghan culture. They hate each other. They're not united. They will be united when a foreign power kills all of them, and then they will be united. But as soon as they leave, they start fighting each other again. So that's the. So
how can that ever be a viable, stable country?
Decentralized Afghanistan. Right now, the whole power of the whole nation is in Kabul. That shouldn't happen. It should be federalism. A federal kind of a government which every province, they can run their own affairs, only pay tax to the government, but run the affairs according to your own culture and your own beliefs. Instead of bringing democracy is a concept in Afghanistan. You bring democracy on a person who lives in 12th century. How are you going to control that population? One policy for the whole nation doesn't work. Simple as that. Would you say that you have the same culture as people in Eastern Europe? You don't. English people have different culture and they have different culture. You cannot use the same rules and apply, let's say, in Chechnya or somewhere different just because they're white. You cannot do that. You have to accept their local tradition, their values. But the West thought that, okay, no. Democracy would be acceptable to every single ethnicity in Afghanistan.
Okay. I'll let someone else talk to you now, just because I've been hogging your attention. I could talk to you all day.
That's fine. I'm happy to answer as many questions as you guys want.
I have got another little question if no one else has got them.
Go on, Phil. I'll go after you.
Okay, no, go. You go.
No, well, what I was just going to say is it's incredible the intricacies involved, because obviously our only insight into it is from the media, and how much of what you're discussing is missing from that. I had no idea about the lithium batteries and things like that, and compartmentalising it into the psychological defeat, the military, the economic. And I think as well, because one thing that struck me a lot in news reports is how the Afghan army had been trained for so many years and how it folded so quickly. That is something that I haven't been able to get my head around, but it makes a lot more sense. Do you think it's the psychological defeat, that obviously they weren't trained with the equipment, and there was all the changing strategies and focus, but what I can't understand is why we let that happen, and why the UK and the US allowed that to happen? And do you think it's because they didn't want the Afghan army to have that information? It's almost like they, that you're just not giving.
That was going to be my other question. Were they deliberately left untrained, specifically to guard against this thing you're saying about us losing technology and that going in the hands of the Taliban? But is that possibly part of the reason for not fully training the Afghan army, because then you risk losing the secret technology and stuff if they don't know how to use or maintain it? they can't pass that knowledge on to the Taliban. But that's really short-sighted again, because you either invest in that army or you don't. Now they've folded and you've lost the country.
You see, first of all, the Afghan army was fighting. The last US soldier before this airport thing who was killed, it was in 2018. Before that, after that, there was absolutely no casualties. And Britain didn't lose a soldier for the last 5 years. So who was doing the fight? The fight was actually been done by the Afghan Special Forces and commandos. So there was the regular army, which was absolutely useless. But they were good. Just they were used as a police just to show, face there, and they had mentors. Obviously, they were dependent on all the supports they were receiving. But see, the reason they unfolded, they all lost so quickly was the Air Force was taken away from them, and the Air Force that they had was completely dismantled. So when you in a war like that, it is because I have been there and I've seen it that we had no air support. Even when I was with the SAS, we had nothing. We couldn't defeat the enemy. The terrain of Afghanistan is mountainous. It's not like, it's flat. The enemy is not wearing a uniform. But if you're wearing a uniform, you're identified easily. The enemy did not. And it was a guerrilla warfare. Now, why they didn't fight? A lot of them didn't fight because, first of all, there was a deal. There was a deal that they kept telling them. The Afghan president who fled away, he took $169 million cash with him. And his aide got millions as well. Now, the other problem here was that the president was corrupt too. He was deeply corrupt. He was ethno-fascist, that he only cared about one ethnicity, and it was his tribe, which was just one part of Afghanistan, and he spent all the funds there. But he was American. He left Afghanistan. It wasn't going to be a massive cost. There was only 2,500 American soldiers, and all they were doing was providing air support and mentoring. And mentoring, that's it. So they were prepared. They wanted to fight, but because of the deal was it's so secret. I only know about a few things the deal which was done between the Taliban and the U.S. forces. First of all, when Trump signed it, all Trump wanted to do is that he wanted to basically, the deal was that we are going to leave only a bunch of American soldiers, special forces, to only conduct operations against Islamic State, not against Taliban. So this would have brought peace in Afghanistan, at the same time a U.S. presence to fight other terrorist networks and make sure there's not any future attack on the West. Now for Biden, again, it goes back to the U.S. politics. Obviously, you know that Democrats and Republicans, they absolutely hate each other. You know how divided they are. So they wanted to do something different. Biden is an attention seeker, and he's very pro-Pakistan. The Democrats, they don't care about Afghanistan. They want to have a deal. They want to use diplomacy, which failed. As you saw that, how they dealt with Iran, how they want to keep Pakistan, again, due to nuclear weapons. So Afghanistan doesn't really mean anything to them. They want to, they like, do whatever, you can bring religious people, I don't care. So they have basically abandoned the military. As you said, it was also psychological. Even though the Afghan army, most of them, the special forces, they are still fighting. They are in the valley right now. They are in Panjshir Valley. They are fighting. They have killed thousands of Taliban in the past few days, but they have lost a lot of people too. They don't have air support, but that means that they have got no support. All they do is they're using the terrain, the mountains against the Taliban. That's the only advantage they have. And Taliban, they sent all their forces from all over the country in one center, in one point, to make sure to defeat them. So that was the special forces which was trained to fight of Afghanistan. They are still fighting. But the regular army was the problem. That was the problem. I mean, US had absolutely nothing to lose here. Look, in Germany, they still have 35,000 soldiers. That cost them a lot of money. In South Korea, they kept their forces for the past 70 years. They're still not withdrawing, and it's not 2,500. It goes up to like 20,000, 30,000 US soldiers out there. So when they say that I'm not going to have a forever war, then why do you have a forever war, a longer war in South Korea? Why do you still have 35,000 people, soldiers in Germany? These are just two examples. Afghanistan, if you again look back, Vietnam was defeated. I mean, US was defeated in Vietnam because of the Russian support. Russia supported Vietnamese to defeat America. When Russia went to Afghanistan, US wanted to take revenge. They armed everyone. They brought extremism in Afghanistan. Afghanistan was not like that in the 1970s. They brought extremism in Afghanistan to defeat the Russians. When the Russians were defeated, they left it. Or Taliban and all other fanatics, all these, they just got gathered around, and that's why 9/11 happened. They had to come back. They had to come back. Now America obviously they have more enemies than just Russia. They have a lot more enemies, and that even destroyed them. That gave their enemy even more power.
I really hate to interrupt, Eddie, but our session is about to expire, and I'm guessing everybody wants to come back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you guys have any questions in the future, you can email me, you can ask me. I'm happy to provide more lectures, whatever you want. I hope this was helpful. But whatever question comes to your mind, send me an email, whatever. I'm happy to answer, give you as much information as possible.
Okay, that's been really great, Eddie. I've actually got to go to do something else right now, otherwise I would pop back in. But it's been really good. I'd love to sort of pick your brains again sometime. Okay, thanks very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. It's fascinating. Really, really appreciate you speaking to us about, well, everything that you have.